I'm life and business coach Samantha Sifring, and this is the Online Business Building Mamas podcast, where you learn how to build a wildly successful business from home while raising kids. Hello, mamas. How are you doing? I want to start off by thanking all of you so much for your well wishes and your love about my surgery recovery. It is really an example of my imperfect business building and all of that you got to see, that I don't schedule my podcast all that far out. I was planning to record it on Sunday, and Sunday I started feeling bad, and then it just got worse from there. So thank you for your grace. Thank you for your love. I am really happy to both be alive and also to be back here, getting back to work to help all of you grow your businesses. So while I was gone, a lot happened. George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police, and the response to that became what I see as a tipping point for mainstream support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Personally, this past week was a major shift for me from thinking that it's enough to be a good person, to be nice to other people, and to not be intentionally causing harm to other people, to really realizing that it's my duty as somebody with a platform and as a white woman to speak up in support of Black Lives Matter. That I really need to be clear about where I stand, and I need to look for how I contribute to the problem, how I'm part of the problem, and how I can do work to be part of the solution. If you're white, you might be feeling the same way, and you might be seeing things from a very new perspective. And I know that a lot of you are wondering this: how do we move forward now? What are our next steps with our businesses, which we'd like to make money, but also it feels really insensitive and inappropriate, and we really want to be socially responsible and anti-racist and a force for positive change. Well, I don't think that I'm qualified to be a teacher on how to be anti-racist or confront your own prejudices or biases. I do want to be a leader and role model for you. And part of how I do that is bringing in experts on topics that I'm not an expert in. So this week on the podcast, I interviewed Alyssa Hall, one of my amazing clients who is a coach who specializes in helping people do this internal work and take action on it. She gives incredible insights on what it's like to live and business build as a woman of color. She shares what she wishes white women knew. This gave me chills. I think it will really inspire you as well. She asks 3 questions that will help you know how to re-engage with your business, even if it is the last thing you feel like doing right now. And she's going to give you a clear test to know if you're doing it right or doing it wrong in your response. I approached this conversation with 2 intentions. First, as a student, I asked the questions that I wanted to know myself and the questions that I'm hearing from all of you. I came into it eager to learn, and you're going to see that I had at least one complete mind-blown moment that completely shifted my perspective about why it's important to take a vocal and visible stand for Black Lives Matter. Second, I wanted to allow Alyssa to shine. I wanted to use my platform to share her voice and her message, and I hope if you are serious about going beyond posting a hashtag or a black square on social media, and you want to create lasting change in your life and in your business and in this country, that you will hire her to walk you through that work. All right, let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have my friend and client, Alyssa Hall, here to tell us all the things that we need to know about being anti-racist. I think there's been a lot of desire for this conversation and a lot of questions, and I really wanted to bring Alyssa's voice into this conversation. I think that she'll have a lot to offer. So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and I'm just so gracious of you to be able to even offer this platform for so many women who are confused right now. This is exactly what they need to hear right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I am like, I'm not the one to be teaching them. I am learning and learning so much from you in particular. So I am really happy and grateful to you to give your time and your thoughts to all of us here. So today, what I really want to help people do is go past what might be, up until this point, more of a performance of support, of saying Black Lives Matter, I care, blah, 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 whatever they're saying, which is great, but turning that into lasting change beyond this week or last week or this month, and really moving forward into affecting change in their business, in their family, in the world. So that is what this conversation is going to be about. And I'm going to ask you a lot of questions to help them do just that. But
I'm ready. I'm
first,
excited.
perfect. First, I want to step back and hear a little bit about your experience as both a mom who's a woman of color and an entrepreneur. Just tell us a little bit about that. Like, what do you think is different? What do you think that we don't know? Just explain a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, as Samantha mentioned, I'm a mom. I'm a single mom to a 4-year-old. Both my daughter and I are multicultural. I am half African American and half Cuban, and my daughter is African American, Cuban, and Dominican. So we are experiencing a lot of things on all different ends of the spectrum. I am of a darker shade than she is, so there are certain things that I may experience that she won't, which is like colorism. That's a huge thing in the Hispanic culture. That is like a whole separate topic. But I feel that it's important to bring up because even though I'm Black, I'm still having these same conversations, but on a different spectrum. Like I'm still having these same hard conversations with like family members, especially after I had my daughter, because I didn't want her to feel bad about herself, her curly hair, just everything. I wanted her to feel normal and like love it. So I do get on the other side of just like how difficult all this is. Um, but I also wanted to talk about like my experience as a woman of color, just like seeing the entrepreneur space, especially like the coaching space. It's something that really hit me hard like this last week and a half, just like realizing like how whitewashed it is. And not to say that it's like a bad thing, but it's a thing that I've taken notice of. I'm just like, oh, like I'm the only Black person here, or I'm the only darker person here, or the only Hispanic person here. And it's something like I'm totally used to it by now, but it's something that I always notice. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And I didn't let the thought like go past that. But then after this like past like 2 weeks, I've just been like, but wait, why? Why is it that like all of like the big name coaches or like the big name like business owners are all white? Why is that? What is happening? Like diving deeper into what is going on. And something that I experienced a lot this like past week and a half is like a lot of people talking about like Black Lives Matter and like trying to make this a regular everyday conversation, especially in the online space. And a lot of what we've been met with is like, I'm tired of hearing about this. Like, if this group or if this whatever doesn't support your values, and you guys can just leave. And it's so hard to be like, okay, sure, I'll leave this environment that has a bunch of networking opportunities, a bunch of just business opportunities, to then go start up something by myself with just 100 people.
Mm.
And it's like, once that happened, I was like, this is why. This is exactly why it's so hard for women of color to be able to grow, because we have to continue to leave spaces that are unsafe to create a space that's safe for us with less people.
Whoa. Yeah. This is something that was not even on my radar and makes so much sense that, like, where the spaces where the opportunities are, where the networking is, where the relationships are, aren't safe, or like actively not safe. And actively being like, yeah, we don't care, basically.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's really just annoying and frustrating when you really like notice what's going on. And I feel like too, it brings up the point of like why it's so important, and why we're asking a lot of like non people of color, well, actually non-black people in general,
Mhm.
to announce like, hey, I understand what's going on, hey, this is a safe space, so we know that we can stay, and the people who have to leave are the people who are not safe, versus
Yeah.
us leaving and yeah, doing all that.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad that you shared that perspective, because I definitely have wanted to make it clear that my space is safe. But I hadn't put these things together, that like having those unsafe spaces closes off access to ways to grow and grow your business.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it's huge, it's crazy.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think that I think that I'm probably not the only one who's like, whoa, about that. And I think that really shines a light on why it is important to say that, right? To say this is a safe space. These are my values. You're welcome here.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so hard. Like I've been seeing a lot of women that are just like, but I don't know exactly, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to navigate it. And that's what started like a lot of the more passive actions that are good, so that we at least know you're safe. But like the um the putting up the black square on Blackout Tuesday, or putting up the picture that says Black Lives Matter, like those are letting us know like, okay, you're safe, that's good. And we're like, but we're still kind of waiting, we're
Right.
still waiting to see like, are you just doing this because it's trendy, or are you going to actively make sure that you are a safe space?
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to this question of what now, right? Like, for people who have heard this and who are like, okay, I used to think it was enough to just like not be an active racist. And now I'm realizing that that's not enough. I need to be actively anti racist. And yet I have no idea what that actually looks like in my business. What thoughts do you have about that? What are some steps that people can take now besides just putting up the black square or saying Black Lives Matter?
Yes. So this one is so difficult, because I feel like a lot of people are trying to make sure that they're not focusing the issue on them, that they're also like highlighting exactly what's going on, and they're making the focus on the movement, on Black people. So it's difficult to, write an email from yourself, or write a post from yourself doing that. But the ones that have really stuck out for me, I'm going to give you guys a little framework. So they've had like these steps. So the first one is talking about like, you're aware what's going on, talking about what's going on, then talking about where you are in your journey. It is so comforting. Not in this part, it's not just for Black people, but for the not Black people that are on your email list, or that are following you, to see like, oh my God, okay, she's where I am too, or she understands what I'm going through. That's another thing too, because a lot of white people that aren't business owners, they're just like, they're really stuck. They are really, really stuck because they don't know how to do this. They feel like they're alone. They may not have other people to talk to. So by saying where you are in your journey of understanding or of becoming anti-racist, that is so, so comforting for them. um, the next one is talking about your action steps. What are you going to do? How are you going to change either yourself or your business? What are you going to be doing to make sure that your business is a safe space for us? I've been seeing a lot of people that are hiring women of color onto their staff. I remember, like, this was like years ago, I used to see people who would, like, authors who would write books, and they would ask specifically, like, for diverse test readers. And it's kind of the same thing, like making sure like the practices that you have in your business are safe for whoever it is, but also making sure that it's not offensive, because a lot of things that have been happening lately are like, not just within the last 2 weeks, but just like over the last few years, are so, so offensive, and people just don't realize it. And it's because they don't have a diverse staff. So
Hmm.
including what it is that you're doing there. And the last two things are the most important, especially for both ends actually. First of all, including resources. No one knows what to do. So if you're able to even include one link, that is so helpful. And it also takes the load off of everyone's Black friend, because they're like, what do I do? I don't know. So like, I don't have like a pocket full of resources, so I'm doing the same Googling that you're doing. So it really takes a load off for them, and it helps your white followers like have a place to start. But then a really, really good step that I've noticed a lot of people taking more recently is highlighting other Black people in that same space or in a similar space, so that they have more diverse people that they can follow.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that those are great, great steps. Um, and I'm like thinking about all of those. Like, how do I implement that? How am I, what are my next steps? I know you asked in my Facebook group this week, you were one of my guests that I had facilitating conversations, and you asked, what are the next steps? And I thought it was so good. I pinned it to the discussion. I'm like, everybody look at this. But I
Yes.
think it's a good ongoing conversation to have, because I think it's going to be unfolding, right? Like a lot of us are like, "Oh, I'm starting to read books, I'm starting to watch documentaries and all of
Mhm.
that right now." And while education is part of that, I think then there needs to be an action after the learning.
Exactly, exactly. And that's like, when I asked that question in your group, is because I realized a lot of people were just talking about, like, I watched this movie last night, or I finally picked up this book. And I'm like, that's great. I am the queen of ingesting information and not doing anything. So let's make sure that we're all doing something with all this information.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I also want to talk about the flip side of someone who's maybe like, yes, I care, I want to do something, but they're really afraid of doing the wrong thing and making a mistake. So they're just like being silent instead. What is your advice to someone like that?
It's scary. I'm just like, I'm really gonna acknowledge you there. It's scary because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to offend anyone, but really just come from your heart. Come from your heart, say whatever it is that you are feeling right now. But also on the flip side, be open to the fact that there may be criticism, and also be open to the fact that the criticism is not meant to hurt you. And even if it does come from someone who's just like very pissed off, like, understand we've been like talking about this for years. It's like when you, oh, we're all moms here, so it's like when you tell your kid to do one thing 27 times, the first 20 you're maybe like, you have that nice tone, but once
Yeah.
you hit 27, even if you have a second kid and they ask you that same question, you're going to be annoyed because you said it 27 times,
Yeah,
even
you're
if to the
done.
second kid you said it, you only said it once. So
Yes.
that's what's going on here. So just like be understanding. And another thing that I'm also seeing like a lot is like, we don't want to see your white tears. Don't tell us about like how sad you are, blah, blah, blah. I don't want you to tell yourself that. Don't tell yourself that like the reason why you're crying or the reason why you're upset is not valid, because it is. It is still so valid to be upset, because a lot of a lot of people are just opening their eyes to what's happening, and it's so upsetting. It's
Hmm.
really upsetting. So it's okay, but what we mean by that is don't make this story be about you.
Yeah.
That's all that we're asking. And so, yeah, just be open to other people saying things to you that may feel hurtful, but then just step away and think about it later on. But it's not meant to hurt you.
I think that's a really good point. And something that I have been thinking about a lot is like, there is a lot of talk about like change and that kind of thing. And I'm like, nothing has changed. Like, this has been how things are for a long time. And
Yeah.
like, a lot of us are just now seeing it and are like, whoa, this is shocking. But like, really, nothing has changed. It's just like
Mhm.
we like pulled the blanket off of it for some of us.
Yeah.
And that has been really helpful to me to just keep remembering like it needs to change. Like the change still needs to happen, but like this isn't like a new situation.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like, what is so like a lot of people are realizing. Like, I have like names in the back of my head of other people who have gone through what George Floyd went through.
Yeah.
And so, like, even when I first saw the video, I think it was like uh, on a Monday, I don't know what it was, but when I first saw the video or heard about it, I couldn't watch the video. Those videos trigger me now because I already know how
Yeah.
it's going to end. And I was just like, another one. Like, I was just annoyed, but it was so relieving to see. Like, I don't know why everyone saw it. Like, somehow it just like everyone knew what was going on, and then everyone demanded change. I feel like it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was just so relieved that it's like, oh my God, we're finally doing something about this. Thank God, like something is happening. But
Hmm.
it's not an isolated incident. And I feel like that's what like us Black people are like trying to reiterate to everyone. It's like, it's not just him. It's not just Minneapolis. It's not just that police department. It's everything, and everything that lies underneath it, which is racism and prejudice.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. All right. So, another question I have for you is this. I've been seeing this phrase, do better. And when I see it, it resonates with me. I have this thought every time I grow, every time I have transformation, it comes from looking how I'm wrong in whatever situation, whether it's a relationship or business or anything. Thinking about how am I wrong? What am I not seeing here always leads to growth. So when I hear do better, that's what I associate it with. I think, okay, how am I wrong here? How can I grow here and see this differently? For those who see that and are like, I don't know what that means, or maybe even feel attacked by that, what advice do you have or what thoughts do you have about what that can actually look like?
Yes. So that is such a hard, like, for me, I am so like, I feel like I'm like deep down, I'm like meek and shy. So if someone were to tell me like do better, I'm just like, I'm trying. I don't know what you want me to do. But even saying that out loud, I'm realizing that I'm taking it to mean what I did previously isn't important. And that's not what we're trying to say. We're trying
Mhm.
to say, like, that's good. We're glad you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, but you guys need to do more so that action can be taken. I feel like a lot of people were like, I'm calling it like passively non-racist,
Yeah.
and it's like, good, that's good, but we need you to be actively anti-racist to combat the actively racist people. So it's just like take that one further step so that we can actually see some type of change with all that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that just resonates a lot. I was telling my mastermind that I feel like for me, this has been a shift from like identifying as like the good liberal white woman who is like not actively oppressing anyone, right? And thinking like, great, I'm doing it, to realizing like, no, there are many ways that I'm part of the problem. What are they? And keep digging for them and keep making them right and doing what I can, and knowing that that's probably a lifetime endeavor, and I'm going to keep finding ways that I need to do better.
Yes. And you saying that like brings up for me, I feel like a lot of people are thinking, especially when I say like actively racist, they're thinking of like the far end of the spectrum, like the KKK
Yeah.
or someone who's like a really angry, mad person. But there are regular people who hold prejudices, and I have like a quick story
Yeah.
that is like
Tell
coming
it.
up for me now. So when I was like 21, 22, I had went to see a therapist, and it had been something I should have done like when I was 18, but I was like, I finally mustered up the courage. I'm going to go see a therapist. And I spoke to her about my struggles, which at the time were like severe anxiety, like moderate depression, to the point where it was difficult for me to attend college. It was so difficult for me to do things I wanted to do. And at the time, I was like, I want to be a doctor. Like this is what I dream of doing. And on my first session with this woman, I went to her office and I started speaking to her about it, and she wouldn't hear my full story. She wasn't like listening at all. And I'm a very self-aware person, so I know like where a lot of these triggers are coming from. And so I tried to explain that to her, and she was just like, well, it seems like just school is just too hard for you. Why don't you just, instead of trying to be a doctor, why don't you just go to a community college and just like get like one of those little nursing degrees? And I was just like, oh, okay. And everything that I told her, she would like sort of like bring it down. And I'm just like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, I know I'm academically smart. I'm not saying that these things are hard. And that was like the like real pivotal shift in my head, that like prejudice is like a huge, like it's still out there. I'm like such an oblivious person. So it took like for that harsh moment to realize like, oh my God, she thinks like I'm one of those like girls like that don't have any aspirations, that are just I don't know, that don't have any aspirations and don't have any knowledge, and that's what she sees from looking at me and from hearing a small part of my story. And so she's a therapist, so clearly she's an educated woman, and I'm sure she has like friends and family, and I'm sure she's a nice person because she like has to be, but she still has prejudices.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have someone like that and you hear, it could even just be one comment that that person says, even speaking to that person about that comment, that can like have a whole ripple effect. Like if someone had spoke to that therapist then, or like prior in her life, about like her prejudices that she has, then I may not have had that experience. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I really want people to realize in terms of like the importance of speaking out.
Yeah. And coming from my background, because I have a degree in therapy, I know that she has taken classes on diversity and like multicultural counseling and that kind of thing. It's required. Um, and there's some things you just can't learn from a book or from a course. You have to learn
Mhm.
from that, from messing it up and being told like you messed that up.
Exactly. Exactly. And the other key part of the story too is like after that, I was like I said, I was like 21, 22. I didn't even tell my mom until like months later because I felt ashamed. I almost like believed that woman. I remember going to my boyfriend and I was like, if I were in a really rough space, I would have believed her and I would not have like pursued what I wanted to pursue. And like months later, when I told my mom, she's like, we have to report her. We have to do all of these things. But I didn't have that thought. Like
Yeah.
felt like I was too small to do that. So that's another thing too. Like there are a lot of people that you don't know who they hurt, but they don't feel powerful enough to speak out about it.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, if I'm ever being an ass, just let me know. I'll I'll
Got you.
listen. Uh, okay. I This is just like my curious little question. What do you wish white women knew?
I wish that white women knew how much power you guys have. That I think that's the key thing that's like coming up for me right now. How much power you guys really, really have, and how much just saying one thing or just stepping in or even just your physical presence can be enough to stop something from happening. Like you guys have so much power in how you can help that there I'm trying to think of like words to say, but you guys have so much power to help that if you're like creative enough, you guys can do like so many different things. Like I even saw like a picture of like one of the peaceful protests. Like a bunch of white women were like holding hands in front of like as a wall from like all the black protesters behind them.
Mhm.
They didn't say anything. They were just standing there, and that protected all of the people behind them. Like you guys have so much power. Like I'm thinking like Spider-Man where they say like with great power comes great responsibility. Like
Yeah.
that's what I want you guys to take away.
Yeah. Wow. I felt moved hearing that, just hearing that reflection. I'm sure other people do too. I think obviously like feminism is something that is a big value in my business, and I've been thinking a lot about how does that need to expand and how do I need to think about that in a different way now? And I think that this is a really good way, right? Like continuing to help women to see the power that we have, particularly white women, to see the power that we have to affect change in this area, not just for ourselves financially, but for
Mhm.
society. I think that is really powerful.
Yes. Yeah,
Thanks for saying that.
of course. It literally just came to me now, and I'm just like, I'm gonna say this. I don't even care. Like this is good.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, thank you. It makes me want to go out there and put on a cape. What can I
Yes.
do?
Yes.
All right. So I also want to talk a little bit about this for those of us who have businesses who have been really in it this week, very focused on amplifying Black women, listening, learning, all of those things. We want to use our power for positive change going forward. And we feel really hesitant to like engage with our business, making offers again. Going back to business as usual feels very wrong. Do you have advice on next steps? Like, how do you re enter making money, making offers, running a business if you feel like that's the last thing you want to do right now?
Yes. So I have two thoughts on this. First, I invite you to really curiously ask yourself, like, how can I serve right now? How is my business serving right now? Or almost like, or even like, how can I pivot my messaging to serve right now? That's like the first thought. But then another thing too, even just doing the work within yourself to get yourself to want to do those things, to want to go back out there and sell and promote, is how are you a part of making things better? I was reading a post earlier today about like when you like buy from a black business, what you're doing is making it so that that woman in that neighborhood now is making more money, and then more money from that neighborhood goes to the schools and all the community things that are lacking. And when I read that, I was just like, oh my God, like I get it now. And like, think about that for yourself. How is you making money, or how is the service that you're providing, the product that you're selling, how does that make a larger impact? And I feel like that alone will get you to actually get up and do what it is that you need to do, because the reason why you started your business was to serve somebody, to help somebody, and to use that and use what's going on in conjunction together in whichever way works best for you.
Those questions are so good. I'm like, yep, that's what I needed.
Yes.
You're right. I think anytime we do feel like, just in general, off in our businesses, coming back to that service is always the missing link to like find that motivation and that spark again. So I think that's really, really powerful. Okay, what resources do you have for people who love this? They want more, they want to keep engaging with you, with these topics, with doing better. What do you have for them?
Yes. So first off, if you have kids, really quick, oh well, we're moms, duh. So
Yeah, they all
for
do.
your kids, specifically also for your younger kids, watch that Sesame Street town hall thing. It was like so good and so moving. I only saw literally a small piece of it, and my daughter was watching with me, and it was so good in answering a lot of the questions everyone's having about like, what do we do? Like, how do we talk to our kids about it? They got so clear with it that you'll walk away knowing exactly what to do. So watch that. Um, Another thing that I feel like I'm just going to give you a bunch of links,
Perfect.
and
We'll put them in the
yeah.
show notes.
Yes, there are so many different links, but and I feel like that's so exciting too. There are so many different ways that you can now like support and move forward and continue this work. And something that I'm doing now, which is super, super exciting, is I'm sort of shifting my business to work with women who want to move forward and who want to just take this from just talking about it and reading about it and actually implementing it, and all the hard things and all the scary things that are going to come with it. Um, I just from talking to people this last week, everyone's so afraid of what's going to happen when I talk to my parents. What's going to happen when I finally do speak out and I get backlash? Or how can I even prove to myself that my one step will actually make a change? So that's something that I'm doing. I've decided to pivot my business a little bit and really focus on this because I really want to help us all make a larger shift in actually doing something. So that's what I'm doing. I'm having a coaching program that will help women go from not knowing what to do and feeling like they're stuck to actually being able to take those action steps and move this forward, talk to those people, have those scary conversations. And also, what's most important is understanding what you're feeling, because I feel like a lot of people feel like they either have to hide what they're feeling or not really deal with it in the best way. So at least this gives you a safe space to be able to work out those feelings and even talk about like any underlying prejudices that you may have. I feel like a lot of us are just grown up in a way to think certain things that we don't realize may be harming, and to have a safe space to really unleash what those are and challenge them so that you can more proactively support all of this. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and I feel like that's a really great way for women to continue to take action after all this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everybody listening to this who has those questions and wants to make a change should hire you. I think it's the same thing that I talk about with business, right? Like you can just like consume content and read all the books and take all the courses and whatever. But when you get coached, it actually addresses what's going on inside of you and overcomes that and helps you to take action to create change. And I help people do that with making money, and you help them do that with the racism that they have that they may not realize, the prejudice that they may have that they may not realize, the just like maybe apathy that they've had so far that they're ready to be done with. And I think there's a lot of people waking up to that and ready to make change, and working with you is the way that they can get help with that. And we've talked a lot about safe spaces, and I think you are a very safe space to any white woman who is like, I know that I have these thoughts and I'm ashamed of them, and they can bring them to you, and you're going to be non-judgmental and help them move through that, past that, and create what they actually want in the world.
Yes. Yeah, that's something I realize a lot of people are like worried about. It's just like, I don't want to offend you. And I'm like, listen, let's move past that, because what's more important is understanding what that is and getting to the core of that. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to feel any type of way, because you hired me for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay to be able to let all those things out and work through them.
Yeah. So in the past couple weeks, we've seen all kinds of responses. And I think a lot of doing it right, doing it wrong, doing it messy, doing it weird, not doing. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, how do we know? What are kind of your reflections on the responses? And in light of helping people who listen to this do it right.
Yes. So I feel like this last 2 weeks has just been a crash course of just like how not to address all of this. And something that I really took away is try not to silence other people's voices. And that is what has been happening a lot. A lot of people responded to what was going on in a very quick fashion, and it was in a way that for some people it was offensive. For some people it was like very like tone deaf and not even addressing the whole situation. But that's fine. That's forgivable, right? But then the issue comes when people are maybe like commenting on and responding to it like, hey, this is wrong, this is why. And then the person responds back as like, oh, you're attacking me, please stop attacking me, blah 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 blah. Okay, like going through the whole dramatics of that, but then deleting the entire exchange. The reason why that's so like wrong is because it does two things. The first thing it does is that when the person comes back or when the person is complaining about it later on, there's no evidence. So it's like a very slight form of gaslighting, because then other people think that the person is crazy because they don't even know what the person is talking about when they're complaining about the exchange that they had. And then the original person, they're just not acknowledging it. So it's not helpful. And then on the other side of the spectrum as well, it also plays into the quote unquote angry Black woman narrative, because you see us getting upset off of like, I don't know, like a third offense of something that's happened, but everyone only sees that as the first. They don't see the first two because that one got deleted. So then we just look crazy. We look like we're just yelling and screaming at like all of these things. And it's like, all you had to do was post what you posted, hear whatever it was that we were saying, acknowledge it, and leave it there for other people to learn. That's the other thing too. It's not about, I don't want to like sound mean, but it's not about you in that moment. It's about helping other people learn and see like, this is wrong because of this. And if you leave that there, so many other people won't make that same mistake. And you'll also learn from your mistake as well. And it'll show that you're learning, it'll show that you're growing. So I feel like the only way that you can do this wrong is by not acknowledging your mistakes and by silencing other people who are telling you that you're wrong.
I think that is a really great point, because I think we're going to make a lot of mistakes as white women in general. I mean, as people in general, right? But talking about racism, talking about race, talking about prejudice, like there's going to be mistakes. Like we just, in so many ways, don't know what we're talking about and are trying to talk about it.
Mhm.
And so there's going to be a lot of things that are just wrong or are offensive, unknowingly offensive. And
Exactly.
I know that I have learned a lot watching some of my peers be really messy, and in the way that they've made mistakes very publicly. I have learned and have been like, great, I'm not going to do that. And I know why now, so
Yes.
I do think, as much as I kind of think like I'm not one to teach right now, I want to like highlight people who are. I think also like a lot of the way that I and other white women can teach right now is just showing up and letting whatever the response be the response and letting it be seen and letting that be the lesson.
Yeah, because, we're not going to think worse of you, right? If you make that mistake and you acknowledge it and you course correct, we're not going to think worse of you. I feel like when people delete, they don't want their image to be ruined, but
Mm-hmm.
that action is ruining the image. If you
Yeah.
are like, being a leader, you're just letting it like all hang out there, we will be okay. We'll all be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're not perfect. We don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
Something I've been thinking a lot is like, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm always going to continue to get better. So like I don't have to like beat
Mhm.
myself up for things that I've done in the past, but I can learn from it and be better than that in the future. And I think that's a good stance to have. And like obviously sometimes the best we can needs an apology, right? Like it was the best we could in that
Mhm.
moment and we need to make amends for it. Um and not just say like it was great. Um
Yes.
but I have found like that has been a good little thought for myself because I think the more that we look inside and think about ourselves and what we've done and what we've thought, like there can be a lot of shame and guilt and that kind of thing. So that has been helpful for me to think.
Yes. And I don't know why it's coming up for me, but like when you say that, I think of like when we make mistakes with our kids, like it's so important to do the same thing. And we do the same thing. We'll
Yep.
like sit there that night, like, I can't believe I said all these things or I did all these things. And then the next day, we'll either, if it needs an apology, we'll apologize. But if not, then we'll take what we learned and we'll course correct and do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I know that is separate, but I love the idea and the action of parents apologizing and owning their humanness to their kids. That is so powerful.
Mhm.
Totally separate
Yes.
conversation from this, but
It
we'll
is, but
throw
it's
it in.
important. Yes.
Yeah, we'll throw it in. So good. Yeah. I think everyone should hire you right now. So we're going to put your contact information in the show notes. I'll also take all of the links. I know that you've shared a lot of resources already, just in general. So we're going to round up all of those, put those in so that people have some really good reading, listening, watching, all of the things. Is there
Yes.
anything else that you want to share that we haven't talked about yet?
The one thing that I feel like is perfect for us moms is to just remember to always like have your listening ears open and teach your kids that as well. I feel like that is the best way to start. And what has allowed all these things to go on is like a lot of people weren't like actively listening. So just remember to always actively listening. Teach your kids empathy the same way that you would teach them to like, fight against bullying. It's the exact same like values, empathy, talking to an adult, all of those things. And just listen whenever things sound weird. Even if it's a really weird story, it may be true. My story I feel like was really like weird and shouldn't have happened, but it was true. So always having your listening ears open and teaching your kids to do the same is a huge thing that will help in all of this. And continue to do the work.
Yeah. All right. I would love to give people like one step after listening to this, maybe they're feeling good, they're feeling empowered. What's like one thing that we can charge them with to do right now after hearing all of this? Any thoughts?
One thing that I feel like is important to do is test having a hard conversation by, hold on, I know it sounds scary, but wait, by asking the question, why? That question is amazing. It's completely non-judgmental. Ask the question, why? If you hear something that sounds off, or even if you like see it on Facebook is like the wild, wild west right now, just ask why. Oh, why do you think that way? Or why does that make sense? Or that's all. And just doing that one thing alone, that person may not respond, but you're causing them to think. And that is a really good action to be able to take.
I think that's an awesome suggestion for anybody. It's such a good coaching tool. I've heard you talk about
Yes.
that one before. I'm glad that you mentioned it because it's so good. And I think it is a really simple way to ease into maybe talking to family members or friends or whatever who are saying things that like on the inside you're like, what the hell? What do I say to this?
Yes.
And you could just ask why.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. I appreciate your time so much and your thoughts and just your generosity, both in my Facebook group with all that you provided, what you've provided out in public. You've done so many lives, you've given so much value, and what you've shared here. It is amazing. And I am wishing you so much success in your business in this pivot. I think it is so needed. And so I hope people will take the action of reaching out to you.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I love talking to you. And I'm just glad that you're doing this. Like, this is so helpful for all of your listeners, of Black listeners, white listeners, all of us to know like where you are, where you stand, and that you're also willing to help. So I just thank you.
Yeah, thanks. If you like this podcast, I want to invite you to coach with me over in my program, Mama to CEO. There's you, and there's the consistent income you want to make in your business, and I help you remove everything standing in between. It's lifetime access for mastering your marketing, sales, time, and everything else you need to have the business and life you really want. Whether it's making your first 1,000 or 100,000, I can help you do it. To join, go to mamatoceo.com, mamatoceo.com.